ॐ विश्वन्दर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्गोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वातिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रिय ब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ तपोभिः क्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्षोऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते. I welcome you all to the 15th class of the Atma Bodha series. We will recap verses 30 and 31 before we move to today's verses. निषिध्य निखिलोपाधीन्
निषिध्य निखिलोपाधीन्
नेति नेतीति वाक्यतः
नेति नेतीति वाक्यतः
विद्यादैक्यं महावाक्यैः
विद्यादैक्यं महावाक्यैः
जीवात्म परमात्मनोः
जीवात्म परमात्मनोः
आविद्यकं शरीरादि
आविद्यकं शरीरादि
दृश्यं बुद्बुदवत्क्षरम्
दृश्यं बुद्बुदवक्षरम्
एतद्विलक्षणं विद्यात्
एतद्विलक्षणं विद्यात्
अहं ब्रह्मेति निर्मलम्
अहं ब्रह्मेति निर्मलम्
ब्रह्म सत्यम जगन मिथ्या जीवो ब्रह्मैव नापरः. This is the essential teaching of Vedanta, that Brahman is the ultimate reality. Brahman alone is the ultimate reality. The world that I see in front of me doesn't have its own existence. It is entirely dependent upon Brahman for its existence. And this Jiva is Brahman. So the Jiva is really Brahman. Really speaking, there should not be any problem at all. But the Jiva has all kinds of problems. Why? Because the Jiva has taken himself to be limited. Why has the Jiva taken himself to be limited? Because of self-ignorance, the jiva does not know that I am Brahman. So, in presence of Brahman, so let's look at what is the process by which the jiva takes himself to be limited. In the presence of Brahman, the body, mind, upadhis, they borrow consciousness from Brahman and they become sentient. Now the avarana shakti of Maya comes in and conceals the real nature of Brahman, the real nature of who I am. And therefore, instead of saying that I am Brahman, Jiva mistakes himself to be this reflected consciousness, this borrowed consciousness that exists in the body and mind. And then the Jiva begins to say that I span only this much, even though, really speaking, as Brahman is all pervading. But he says, I span only this much. I am this puny creature in this immense world. And as Brahman, he is imperishable. Then he begins to take the mortality of the body and mind to be his own mortality. Because the attributes of the body and mind are taken to be his own attributes. So he exists in a terribly mixed up condition. So he says, I am limited, I am mortal, I am apurnaha. And because he takes himself to be apurnaha, he gets entrapped in the endless struggle for purnatvam, which is samsara. So he becomes a sansari jiva. So now when the jiva goes to the Guru has to awaken this jiva to his own real nature of being Brahman. So he has to understand, who am I? What is my real nature? For this, he has to gain Atma Jnanam. So how does one gain this Atma Jnana? Just as when the rope is mistaken for the snake, the only thing that solves the problem is the Rajju Jnanam. He has to know that this is a Rajju and a Rajju alone, nothing else. This is a rope. And when he knows this is a rope, the mistake of taking it to be a snake goes away, and all the problems arising from that mistake also go away. So now he has to gain the Atma Jnanam. What form does this Atma Jnanam take? As we said, just as he has to know this is a rope, nothing but a rope, he has to know I am Brahman and nothing but Brahman. This clear knowledge has to take place in the mind. So how does one come to this knowledge? So this is where the Mahavakya Vichara comes in. Where the words of Vedanta, the introductory words of Vedanta, tell me who I really am. That's why Bhagavad Pada says, Vidyat, one should know. What should one know? Aikyam Vidyat. Know the Aikyam means know the oneness, know the identity. Identity of what and what? Jivatma Paramatmano. Should know the identity of the Jivatma with Paramatma. And how do I know this identity? Yes, Mahavakya, through this Mahavakya Vichara. So when the jiva listens to the Mahavakya, then the intellect has a lot of difficulty in accepting what it is saying. Because in the vision of the jiva, I am really limited. I am alpagyaha. I have limited knowledge. Alpa Shaktiman, I have limited powers. And I am karta, bhokta, I am under the control of the law of karma. Whereas Ishvara is sarvajnaha, has limitless knowledge. Sarva Shaktiman has limitless skill. And Ishvara is karma phaladata. The law of karma is wielded by Ishvara. The intellect resists this message. This is where we said that we have to dwell upon what meaning of the word, of a certain word, comes to my mind when the word is used. So we got into the discussion of the primary meaning versus the intended or the implied meaning of words. So just like we said, I want to buy a pot. If I say I want to buy a pot, then when I am using the word pot, in it I'm including the total meaning of the word pot. It includes the nama rupa as well as the clay. And when I say I want to buy this pot, the seller also understands that I am talking about the total meaning of the word pot. So this is the vachyartha, or the primary meaning of a certain word. But more often than not, we don't use words in the sense of the total meaning of the word. We use words where we are intending a partial meaning of the word, like when I say I ate a banana. At that point, I am not talking about the total meaning of the word banana, because that includes the peel. So when I say I ate a banana, what I'm intending to say is that I removed the peel and I ate the fruit. And the listener also understands that this is not the total meaning of the word banana. So this is called the lakshyartha, the intended meaning of the word. So here we saw a few examples. For example, this Devadattaha is that Devadattaha. When I'm introduced, when I'm told that this Devadattaha is that Devadattaha, this Devadattaha is bald-headed, he has got spectacles, and he has got a paunch, he's got a beard, whereas that Devadattaha is a small child wearing shorts, hardly 2.5 feet, 3 feet tall. So if I take the total meaning of this Devadattaha and that Devadattaha, there cannot be any identity between the two. So when I see this, what does my intellect do? Even though there may be some initial resistance, I go past that resistance. How? By removing the upadhis. That's why Bhagavad is saying, Nishidhya Nikhilo Badhin. Set aside the upadhi. If you want to really understand what the Mahavakya is saying, set aside the upadhis, only then you will understand. So then I understand that there is this one person behind this Devadattaha and that Devadattaha that the speaker is implying. That is what he wants me to understand. And this person is neither qualified by this Devadattaha nor by that Devadattaha. The qualifications are all set aside. This person, this one person who is behind this Devadattaha and that Devadattaha doesn't have either of those qualifications. So in this way, I understand, I discard the superficial differences and understand the essential identity that is there. So we also took the example of this person. Example, I am standing in front of two mirrors. One is a convex mirror, the other is a concave mirror. In the convex mirror, I see a small reflection of my face. In the concave mirror, I see a big reflection of my face. So if I am told that this face is that face, there is an identity between those two faces. And if I take the Vachyartha, then this face is really small, that face is really magnified. There cannot be any identity. So what do? I look at the Vachyartha of this. I say, okay, the small face is here. But the small face cannot exist without the reflecting medium, the convex mirror. So the convex mirror is also included in the Vachyartha. And the small face cannot exist without the original face. The original face is also included in the Vachyartha. So this is the Vachyartha of the small face. Now when I look at the big face, there I see the big reflected face. But then that cannot exist without the concave mirror, the reflecting medium. And the big face cannot exist without the original face. The Vachyartha of the big face also has these components, all these three components. And clearly there is no identity when I talk about the Vachyarthas. Therefore, what do? Nishidhya nikhilo upadhin. I set aside the upadhins. I set aside the convex mirror. With that, the small reflected face goes. I set aside the concave mirror. With that, the large reflected face goes. What is left? There is just one original face in which there is no distance and no difference. This is the identity of the two faces. So in a similar manner, I have to understand the Mahavakya also. So if I take the Vachyartha, of the Jivatma, then Jivatma really refers to this reflected consciousness in the śarīra trayam. Reflected consciousness in the śarīra trayam. But then that cannot exist without the śarīra trayam, the sūkṣma, the sthula, sūkṣma and karana śarīras. So there is one reflected consciousness, three reflecting media. And the reflected consciousness cannot exist without the original consciousness, the Brahma Chaitanyam, otherwise called Atma in the context of the Jiva. So all of these three come together in the Vachyartha. Now if I look at the Vachyartha of the word Paramatma, and in it I have the reflected consciousness, the Brahma Pratibimbam, in what? In the prapañcha trayam. So I have the reflected consciousness and I include the prapañcha trayam, which is the sthula prapañcha, sūkṣma prapañcha and the karana prapañcha, otherwise called Maya. And the reflected consciousness cannot exist without the original consciousness or the Brahma Chaitanyam. Therefore, all of these, the reflected consciousness, the prapañcha trayam and the Brahma Chaitanyam are in the Vachyartha of the word Paramatma. And if I retain the Vachyartha, I will never be able to see the identity. Because the differences appear too immense for there to be any identity. Therefore, what do? Nishidhya nikhilo upadhin. I set aside the two upadhins. How? Neti neti ti vakyataha. Through the Upanishadic statements that ask me to set aside the upadhins. Therefore, I set aside the śarīra trayam. With that, the reflected consciousness also goes. What is left is the Atma, which is just Brahma Chaitanyam renamed. And here I set aside the śarīra trayam. With that, the reflected consciousness also goes. What is left is the Brahma Chaitanya. Therefore, there is this one Brahma Chaitanyam that is left behind. And in it, there is no distance and no difference. The distance between the Jivatma and Paramatma and the difference between the Jivatma and Paramatma were all caused only by the upadhis. In the original consciousness, there is no distance and no difference. Therefore, I look beyond the superficial differences and see the essential identity of the Jivatma and Paramatma. There is this one consciousness, which is what Jivatma essentially is, and that same consciousness the Paramatma also essentially is. So here there was a possible objection that was raised, that the differences from the standpoint of the upadhis are more than the identity, because The differences is from the perspective of the Sharira Trayam versus the Prapañcha Trayam. The three of those, the Sthula Sharira is very different from the Sthula Prapañcha, Sūkṣma Śarīra is very different from the Sūkṣma Prapañcha, and the Karana Sharira and Karana Prapañcha are again different. One is small, the other is large. And the reflected consciousness also is very different. One is a micro-reflected consciousness, the other is a macro-reflected consciousness. One is Vyashti Chidabhasa, the other is the Samashti Chidabhasa. So the differences are there from the standpoint of these four upadhis. But the identity is there only from the standpoint of consciousness. So why are you highlighting the identity? So this is where Bhagavad Pada says, Avidyakam śarīrādi drishyam budbudavat ksharam. Avidyakam. That all of these śarīrādi, meaning the Śarīra Trayam and Prapañcha Trayam, all of those are products of avidya, or in other words, products of Maya. So if you look at the Sthula Shariram versus the Sthula Prapañcha, both are products of Maya. They exist in a lower order of reality. If we look at Sūkṣma Shariram and Sūkṣma Prapañcha, again they are products of Maya. They are mithya, exist in a lower order of reality. And if we take the Karana Shariram and the Karana Prapañcha, then that is nothing but Maya itself. And as we have said, Maya doesn't exist as an also. Maya has no independent existence. Maya is mithya. And therefore, all of the Sharira Trayam and Prapañcha Trayam are all mithya. Then what about the reflected consciousness? The reflected consciousness clearly depends on the Sharira Trayam and the Prapañcha Trayam, which is mithya, and therefore the reflected consciousness is also mithya. Therefore, all of these differences are because of mithya, which means that the differences are nothing but mithya. So the identity, on the other hand, is in the Brahma Chaitanya, and that is Satyam. So the identity is real, whereas the differences are not real. Therefore, we are highlighting the identity. And there, all of these differences, they are all budbudavat ksharam, meaning they arise like bubbles. And they are there for some time and they go away. They become manifest, they become unmanifest, they come and go. That itself shows that they are all mithya. Therefore, one has to come to the real identity that exists between the Jivatma and Paramatma. The identity is the reality. So here, when the Guru says you, tat tvam asi, when the Guru says you, then initially the student has got the vachyartha in the mind for the word you. And with the vachyartha, the identity cannot be understood. And therefore the student filters out the unwanted parts of the meaning of the word you. In the sense, the word I, the student understands it as I. So the student filters out the unwanted parts of the meaning of the word I. And then what does he come to? He comes to this original consciousness as the intended meaning of the word I. And this original consciousness is one. Therefore, he says that I am this one original consciousness, which is manifesting as both the Jivatma and the Paramatma. Therefore, in other words, he says, I am Brahman. He comes to the Aham Brahmasmi Vritti. The one who has understood Mahavakya, we said two notions go away. The Parokshatvam of Brahman goes away and the Parichinnatvam of the Atma goes away. Before one comes to Mahavakya, it seems like Brahman is some remote object that the Shastras are talking about, that Brahman is somewhere remote. But for one who has understood the Mahavakya, because he has used the word I in the sense of the Lakshyatha, the original consciousness, that I is nothing but Brahman. Therefore, Brahman is no longer remote, the very self-evident I, which is there in every experience itself is nothing but Brahman. The parokshatvam of Brahman goes away, so the parokshatvam of Ishvara goes away. I would have imagined earlier that Ishvara is somewhere remote, but for one who has understood the Mahavakya, he knows I myself as Brahman with my Maya Shakti have projected to the entire world. Ishvara is not distant from me at all. I am one with Ishvara, being one with Brahman. And the parichinnatvam of the Atma also goes away. Earlier, one had taken oneself to be the limited being, but having understood that I am Brahman, I understand that I don't have the threefold limitations of space, time, and object. I don't have any space-wise limitation being Brahman. Therefore, I am really all-pervading. I don't have any time-wise limitation being Brahman because therefore I am imperishable, immortal. And I don't have any object-wise limitation being Brahman. Because wherever any object is, I am there to give it existence. It cannot exist without me. Therefore, I come to this one, non-dual, aparoksha, aparichinna, Brahmatma. This is one non-dual, aparoksha, aparichinna, Brahmatma that is left in the student mind, and that I am. So this is how one comes to the Aham Brahmasmi Vritti, Aham Brahmasmi Jnanam through the Mahavakya Vichara. So now, if there is any resistance to getting this message, if the intellect is resisting this message, then it means that I have some problem in coming to the Lakshyartha. I am not able to set aside the unwanted parts of the Vachyartha in my mind. We have said the entire understanding has to take place where? In my intellect. Really speaking, there is no mix-up of the Atma and Anatma as we had discussed. Mix-up, the entire mix-up is happening, has happened in my intellect. The sorting out also has to happen in my intellect only. Therefore, in my intellect, I have to come to the Lakshyartha by setting aside the Vachyartha. So if I have any problem in setting aside the Vachyartha, then it means that the Atma and Anatma are still mixed up. There is a mix-up of the Atma and Anatma. So this is where we say that the Vivekaha becomes important. Atma Anatma Vivekaha has to be done through Avasthatraya Viveka, Dhritrishya Viveka, Panchakosha Viveka, through all of that. I have to come to this original consciousness versus reflected consciousness and reflecting media. I have to do this Viveka. When some two things are mixed up, being able to separate them is Viveka. So I have to do this Atma Anatma Viveka. So therefore Vivekaha becomes an important qualification. And similarly, I have to have Vairagyam. Because if I am clinging to Anatma, if I am longing for Anatma, if I am depending on Anatma, then that means that the Vairagyam is not there to the measure that is required. So when the Guru says you, at that point, if I'm still holding on to the Anatma, then again I will not be able to come to the Lakshyartha. Therefore, we say that the qualifications are important. That is why we stress upon the qualifications. Because without the qualification, the Mahavakya cannot be understood. The lack of qualifications is the obstacle. Therefore, we say that one need not despair. The first several rounds of Shravanam, one may not get the message. It's all right. In fact, that is not abnormal. What does one do? One goes back and prepares the mind better, gains the qualification that is required, and then comes back to the Shravan. And then a time comes when I ask myself, why am I hesitating to claim that I am Brahman? Why am I hesitating? So the answer will typically be that I have some defect in the intellect, or some defect of the body, mind, etc. So some defect is brought in as a justification for not being able to say that I am Brahman. But then I say that the body and mind will never be perfect. I will never come to a situation where the body and mind are perfect. Even for a jnani, the body and mind are not perfect. Body and mind will always have limitations. And therefore, these imperfections will always be there in the body and mind. So I have to claim Brahman not because of the perfection of the body and mind, but in spite of the imperfections of the body and mind. I claim that I am Brahman because the imperfections of the body and mind have no bearing upon the original consciousness. Vachyartha has got the original consciousness very much as one of its components. The original consciousness is very much a part of the definition of who I am. I cannot be there without the original consciousness. Of course, I've added on a few things. But then these defects or imperfections of the body and mind don't touch the original consciousness in any way at all. The original consciousness has always been perfect, limitless, without any of these limitations. Therefore, the imperfections of the body and mind need not hold me back from claiming that I am Brahman, I am the Lakshya. Now, once one is able to come to this point, and there can still be certain doubts. Doubts are there all the way from the first Shravanam. In fact, Swamiji says in the first Shravanam, there may not be any doubts at all, because nothing has been understood. When nothing is understood also, there are no doubts. And in the last Shravanam, when everything is understood also, there are no doubts. But in between the first Shravanam and the last Shravanam, there will be doubts. In fact, having doubts is a sign that something has been understood. Right? It has not been fully understood, but something has been understood. So doubts are good, as opposed to nothing being understood. And therefore these doubts have to be raised, these doubts have to be clarified. When the knowledge has got doubts, such a knowledge cannot liberate. We have seen this example before, that if we take a boat, and my boat has been put together loosely, right? By some amateur, it has been put together and it's got holes and leaks, all that. So with this kind of a boat, if I set on a ride in the ocean, then such a boat cannot withstand the vagaries of the ride, because there will be big waves that come and lash at the boat. And such a boat will just fall apart and sink. So such a boat cannot help me cross the ocean. Similarly, we say that is jnanam, moksha, eka sadhana sadhyam. Moksha is accomplished only by one means. What is the means? It is jnanam and jnanam alone. Therefore, this jnanam is like the boat that has to help me cross the ocean of samsara, in which prarabdha karma brings in these waves in the form of problems. These wave-like problems lash at the boat of my knowledge. Therefore, if this boat is kind of loosely put together, if it is a wishy-washy, some kind of a vague understanding, then when the waves of problems brought by prarabdha lash at my boat of knowledge, and if the knowledge is all loosely put together and it's got holes in the form of doubts, then this boat of knowledge will just sink in the ocean of samsara. It's not going to help me cross the ocean of samsara. And therefore, my knowledge has to turn into conviction. Conviction, unshakable conviction that this is indeed who I am. Just like this is a rope and nothing else, I am Brahman, nothing else, needs to be a firm conviction. And only such a conviction, such firm knowledge can help me cross the ocean of samsara. And therefore, I have to do mananam in the form of removal of doubts. And for one who has done this shravanam and mananam, there comes a point in time when there is the rise of doubtless conviction that I am Brahman. There is conviction that I am Brahman. So this is not like a sudden event where one sits for meditation and then suddenly there is some flash and then one suddenly gets this conviction that I am Brahman, nothing else. So we say it is more like a period of transition where doubts are gradually removed and the conviction grows, and finally one feels that there are not any doubts left. I'm totally convinced about it. So this is like a transition period, like the transitioning of darkness to dawn. Now, we look at this, the identification with the body and mind. It comes from two sources. There is identification due to ignorance, and there is identification due to habit. So, with Shravanam and Mananam, when this aparoksha jnanam that aham brahmasmi rises, and it is free of doubts, at that point, the identification with the body and mind because of ignorance is gone. There is no more this ignorance-based identification with the body and mind. Because one knows very well that I am Brahman. But the habit-based identification with the body and mind can continue. Like we give the example of the beggar. The person has been begging for 45 years. Begging in various parts of Mumbai, let us say. The railway station, at the temples and so on. He's a very, very experienced beggar who has been begging for 40 years. So now suddenly he gets the message from some uncle that you have inherited a lot of money. So in fact, he has become a millionaire. So now he has gotten the news and he has now also understood reasonably well that he is a millionaire. But then every day morning, because of the momentum of the habit of the last 40 years, he gets up and he puts on his rags and starts to go. towards the begging destination where he begs. And he realizes, oh, I don't need to do this anymore. Sometimes when he is just sitting there and he sees a crowd of people, he suddenly extends his begging bowl, saying, give me something. And then he slaps himself on the wrist and says, I don't need to do this. So we say that the position of this person who has now gained the doubtless knowledge, who is still got this identification due to habit, is like this beggar. So this, even though this ignorance-based identification is not there in moments of clarity, this habit-based identification can come in moments of crisis. So the samsari jiva comes back purely due to habit, not due to self-ignorance. And so this habit-based identification, it can obstruct the emotional benefits that one should derive from the knowledge. Because if there are problems that come, if there are crisis situations, then what happens is that I respond due to habit. In crisis, when I don't have the ability to step back and think more about the situation, I respond out of habit. Habit is nothing but the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind takes over in times of crisis and dictates the responses. So if I have to derive the emotional benefits of this knowledge, then Vedanta has to be pushed into my subconscious mind. Vedanta has to become my habit. So prarabdha will bring bad news, prarabdha will bring worse news, and prarabdha will bring the worst news. And in all of these, I should be able to know at that point, get the benefit of the knowledge that I am really Brahman. And as Brahman, I am not affected even by the worst news. And therefore, I have to be able to invoke this knowledge at that time in order to get the benefit of it. And finally, I should be able to say, so what? Initially, there may be a what, but that should be followed by a so what. Now, what happens is that there is a what, but then if the mind goes on its own trip, then the so what may come a lot later. In between, I don't derive the emotional benefit. So the what has to be, I have to come to a situation where the what is almost instantly followed by a so what. And for this, we say that this kind of a situation is not unexpected. And it is easier to deal with the habit-based identification than it is to deal with the ignorance-based identification. The ignorance-based identification is a much bigger problem. And if we have solved the ignorance-based identification, we have solved a big part of the issue. In fact, moksha is no longer a goal for such a person. Moksha is not something to be achieved. And he understands that I am essentially free. He understands that. He knows that liberation is not something I have to achieve. What is missing is purely the emotional benefit. Emotional benefit of the knowledge alone is missing. So this is why Nididhyasanam is required. Nididhyasanam is required in order to deal with this habit-based identification so that I can get the emotional benefits. So what is Nididhyasanam for? So first we should see what is Nididhyasanam not for. We be very clear about what Nididhyasanam is not for. So Nididhyasanam, a Vedantic meditation, Vedantic contemplation, What is it not for? Number one, it is not for jnanam. Not for jnana. Not for gaining jnana. If I think that I still have to gain this jnana, then Nididhyasanam is not going to help me gain this jnanam. I need to remove the ignorance. For that, I need to come to the Aham Brahmasmi Vritti. For that, I have to do the Mahavakya Vichara. For that, I have to do Vedanta Shravanam and Manam. That alone is going to give me the Jnana. And second thing, Nididhyasanam is not for gaining moksha. Why? Because if I don't have the Jnanam, then I have to do Shravanam and Mananam. If I have the Jnanam, then I already know that my nature is moksha. I am mukta. Moksha is no longer a goal to be attained. Therefore, Nididhyasanam is not for moksha also. If I think that moksha is a goal to be attained, again, I need to do Shravanam and Mananam until I understand that moksha is not a goal to be attained. Then is Nididhyasanam for gaining some extraordinary experience. We say Nididhyasanam is also not for gaining any extraordinary experience. Aim of Vedanta is not some extraordinary experience also. The aim of Vedanta is an extraordinary knowledge that tells me that I am the extraordinary Brahman in every mundane experience. Therefore, the aim is not some extraordinary experience also. Then what is the aim of Nididhyasanam? We said it is not for jnanam, not for moksha, not for any extraordinary experience. We say it is purely to remove this habitual identification. Viparita bhavana nivrittihi is the aim of Nididhyasanam. So in Nididhyasanam, I repeatedly dwell on the knowledge that I already obtained in Shravanam and Mananam. In fact, in Nididhyasanam, I relive the Shravanam. In the absence of the Guru, in the Shravanam takes place in the presence of the Guru. In Nididhyasanam, I relive that Shravanam by recalling the teaching by myself. In fact, one example that we give is when one learns to ride a bicycle. Then at the time one rides a bicycle, there's somebody holding the bicycle, right? And then first time, the parent may even teach the child that you pedal like this, right? So the child is taught how to pedal. So once the child starts to find the balance and starts to do some pedaling himself, then the child needs to do it without somebody holding it, without the help of the mentor. So similarly here, in the presence of the Guru, the Shravanam takes place. But in Nididhyasanam, I attempt to do that same thing myself. And then I dwell on this for man hours and man hours and man hours. This is a bit like the pickle. If you take a pickle, right, then the pickle marinates in brine. Pickle marinates in brine. That's when the brine really gets into the pickle. It has to marinate in the brine for a length of time. So similarly, the student has to marinate the mind in the brine of the Vedantic teaching. Mind has to soak in the teaching of Vedanta. It has to immerse itself in this teaching. I have to form a new habit. I have to erode my past habits and form the new habit based on the teachings. So in Nididhyasanam, I entertain Vedantic thoughts, Brahma Satyam, that Brahman is the only reality. Jagat is Mithya, Jagat belongs to a lower order of reality, and I am Brahman. I can dwell upon take any area and dwell upon it. And Nididhyasanam himself can take three forms. The first is called Brahmabhyasa Rupa Nididhyasanam. Brahmabhyasa Rupa Nididhyasanam. In this, I can be sitting with my open eyes. I may be standing, walking, eating, or even sometimes we lie down in the bed. And sometimes, for various reasons, I'm not getting sleep. I'm tossing and turning about in the bed. At that time also I can immerse the mind in Vedantic teaching. So at that time, this Brahma Abhyasa Rupa Nididhyasanam, one doesn't need any special time, special place. It can be done anytime, any place. Or when there is a tendency for worry to come in. For example, there's some uncertainty, uncertain situation. So in this kind of a situation also, I can turn the mind towards the teaching instead of coming to the habitual response. Or there may be a situation where I am about to judge myself, that I am no good, I am, suffering. Right? So when this kind of a habitual judgment is about to come in, at that point I can be alert and then bring in the Vedantic teaching. So this is Brahma Bhyasa Rupa Nididhyasana. The second one is Shravana Bhyasa Rupa Nididhyasana. And even though this knowledge has taken place through Shravanam, I can continue the Shravanam because the subsequent Shravanam themselves then become Nididhyasanam for me. When the Guru is teaching about Atma or Brahman, Guru says Atma is so and so, Brahman is so and so. Mentally, I can replace Atma and Brahman with the word I and see the truth of what is being said with respect to myself. And then the third is Samadhi Abhyasa Rupa Nididhyasanam. So in this, I take a specific, I try to form a habit where I meditate every day, sitting in a particular place, in a quiet place, in the early mornings or during in the evenings or both. I try to find the time and close my eyes and dwell upon the Vedantic teaching. So Vedanta teaches about Atma and Brahman using certain words. I try to bring those words. I try to memorize some of these verses. In fact, some of the verses that we are going to see today, those kinds of verses, I can memorize them and bring them to my memory in meditation and dwell upon the meaning of the words, seeing the truth of the meanings of those words. So my aim in Vedantic meditation is not to achieve this thoughtless state of mind. That is not the goal. But to familiarize myself thoroughly with my nature, that my nature becomes my habit. Vedantic thinking becomes my habit. So that is the aim of Nididhyasanam. So with this background, we will get into these verses that deal with the topic of Nididhyasanam. We'll look at verse 32. Dehanyatvat na me janma.
Dehanyatvat na me janma.
Jara karshalayadayah.
Jara karshalayadayah.
Shabdadi vishayai sangah.
शब्दादि विषयै सङ्गः
निरिन्द्रियतया न च.
निरिन्द्रियतया न च.
So one of the things we will see here is that I am recollecting the Vedantic teaching by using the word I, or me, I, me, etc. And connecting the various things that Vedanta has taught me about me, about myself. So what Bhagavad is saying here is Janma Jara Karshya Layadayaha. Janma means births. Jara is old age. Birth, old age. Karshya is this emaciation or this frailty. When in old age we see that the person tends to become thinner, emaciated, very, very frail. That is Karshya. And Layaha means the death. So these are referring to the various stages of the body. Janma, Jara, Karshya, Laya. These refers to the various stages. And then Adayaha, the Adipada is there, which can refer to the various attributes of the body, like the gender, varna, ashrama, etc. So all of these stages and attributes of the body belong to the body. And as we have seen, the body is anatma. The body is never free. The body can never be liberated. The body is subject to prarabdha. I have to be very clear about this. The Jnani acknowledges the limitation of the body. The Jnani knows very well that even the Jnani's body is subject to prarabdha. But having said that, I say fortunate fact. But the fortunate fact is that I am not the body. Dehanyatvat. I am other than the body. And when I say I am referring to the aparoksha, aparichinna brahmatma. I am referring to Brahman. Atma, that is none other than Brahman. So, I am other than the body. And as Brahman, with my Maya Shakti, I have projected this body and mind. With my Maya Shakti. And I have entered this body and mind as this witness consciousness. I was there even during Pralayam as Brahman. At that point, I did not have this body. This body is my own projection, and I have entered this body as the Sakshi. Therefore, I am other than this body. This body is a product of Maya. I, Brahman, am not a product of Maya. So, dehanyatvat, I am other than this body. Therefore, janma, jara, karshya, layadayaha me na santi. All of these properties of the body, they belong to the body, not to me. Again, when I say when I say I, me, etc., I have to be very clear. I am referring to the lakshyartha, not the śarīra trayam, not the reflected consciousness, but the original consciousness. So Vedanta is not about the śarīra trayam and the reflected consciousness becoming liberated. They will never become liberated. So Vedanta is about revising my conclusion and shifting my vision of who I am from the Vachyartha that includes the body and mind. I shift my vision of who I am from the Vachyartha that includes the body and mind to the Lakshyartha, which is the Satyam Brahma, which is ever liberated, which doesn't need to be liberated. Like Swamiji says, Anatma cannot be liberated. Atma need not be liberated. Why it need not be liberated? Because it's already liberated. There is this component of my vachyatha that is already liberated. So I am turning my attention to that component and I'm shifting my eye from this anatma, body, mind, to this lakshyatha that is already liberated. So Swamiji says another beautiful thing in the context of Nididhyasanam. Says Nididhyasanam is all about learning to think like Brahman. That Brahman clearly cannot think because Brahman is changeless. For thinking, you need the mind. But let us imagine that if Brahman could think, what would Brahman say about itself? That is exactly what I say in Nididhyasanam. So all of these verses are like Brahman that is talking. I, who is identifying myself with Brahman, I am doing this thinking like Brahman. So prarabdha cannot touch me. Brahman, prarabdha cannot touch me at all. This body and mind are slaves to prarabdha. But they cannot touch me. Therefore, all of the janma, jara, karshya, layadaya, etc., I don't have any of that at all. So if we look at one important word that we have talked about before, which is asangaha, and that is I also mentioned in the fundamentals of Vedanta class that it is one of my personal favorite words in Vedanta. What does this word asangaha mean? I am asangaha. Means that I don't have sangaha with anything. I don't have a relationship with anything at all. When I say I, again, we are referring to Brahman. So what kind of relationships can be there for anything in the world? There can be three types of relationships. One is called sajatiya sambandha, meaning an object can be related to another object of the same jati, meaning of the same species. Like a human can be related to a human, or a dog can be related to a dog. That is sajatiya sambandha. So Brahman is only one. Atma, which is Brahman, is only one. So there cannot be any sajatiya sambandha because there is no another one of the same species. Next kind of relationship is vijatiya sambandha, where an object of one species is related to an object of another species. Like a human can be related to a dog as the owner and the owned, owner and the pet. But then, is there vijatiya sambandha in Brahman, in Atma that is Brahman? In me, we say there is no vijatiya sambandha at all because Brahman is Satyam. And what is other than Satyam is Mithya, Anatma. Other than Atma is Anatma. Atma is Satyam, Anatma is Mithya. There cannot be any real sambandha between Satyam and Mithya because they belong to different orders of reality. I alone am in my order of reality. There is no second thing in my order of reality for me to be related to. Therefore, there is no vijatiya sambandha also. And there is no swagata sambandha also. Swagata sambandha refers to internal parts. That I may be related to my parts. Like we can take a car and we say the car has its engine. But then I, as Atma Brahman, am homogeneous. I am partless. There are no parts with which I am related. Therefore, these threefold relationships are not there in Atma at all. Therefore, I am not related to anything at all. anything else. So all of this birth and death, etc., they don't belong to me as Brahman. Birth is a connection. Birth is the association of the sūkṣma śarīra with the sthula śarīra. But I don't have any connection with the sūkṣma and sthula śarīras. Therefore, how can I be connected to the event called birth? Similarly, death is a dissociation of the sūkṣma śarīra from the sthula śarīra. Again, an event in which the sthula and sūkṣma śarīra participate. It's an event concerning those two bodies. The death is an event concerning those two bodies. But I am not connected to those two bodies at all, being asanga. Therefore, even death does not belong to me. So birth and death don't belong to me. Then what about the other stages that are in between, like jara and karshya? If birth and death itself don't belong to me, how can jara and karshya belong to me? So I have no connection at all with janma, jara, karshya, layadaya. So dehanyatvat na me janma, jara, karshya, layadaya shabdadi vishayaihi sangaha nirindriyatayanacha. So nirindriyataya. I don't have any connection with these sense organs also. These sense organs of action. Karmendriyat, sense organs of knowledge. Jnanendriyat, I have no connection with them, being asanga. So the sense organs are the ones that contact the sense objects. The sense organs have a connection with the sense objects. But I don't have any connection either with the sense organ or the sense objects. Therefore, nirindriyataya, because I have no connection with the sense organs. I have no connection with the sense object. I have no contact with the sense objects also. So there are all these sense objects like shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. Sometimes these sense objects are not conducive. Sometimes one may hear piercing words from somebody, hurting words, insulting words. What Bhagavad Pada is saying, Shabdadi Vishayaihi Sangaha Nirindriya Tayanacha. I don't have any connection with these Shabdas. The Shabdas are directed towards this particular body-mind individual, but I am not the body-mind individual. Therefore, a person who has really understood the message of the Mahavakya, who has come to the Aham Brahmasmi, can never say, I am hurt, I am insulted. And then, so we'll go to the next verse 33, which continues on a similar theme. Amanastvat na me dukkha.
Amanastvat na me dukkha.
Ragadvesha bhayadayah.
Ragadvesha bhayadayah.
Aprāṇo hyamana shubhrah.
Aprāṇo hyamana shubhrah.
Ityādi śrutiśāsanāt.
Ityādi śrutiśāsanāt.
Dukkha raga dvesha bhayadayah. Here Bhagavad Pada is talking about what's going on in my mind. Even the mind is not under my control, because the mind goes through fluctuations. There is sattva. Sometimes sattva is more in the mind. Sometimes rajas is more. And at the time when one is about to sleep, then tamas is more in the mind. The mind also goes through all these fluctuations. So prarabdha affects the mind also. So due to prarabdha, there can be mental pain. Dukkha can be there in the mind. or raga dvesha, likes and dislikes, and bhaya, fear, ādayah. So there can be other emotions in the mind. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. All of these can be there in the mind. So the mind also can never be liberated. I can say that the mind also can never be liberated. The mind will have its imperfections. Even a jnani's mind is not perfect. But the fortunate fact is, I am not the mind. Just like I said with the body, I can say with the mind also, mind is anatma. Therefore, amanastva, amanaha, I am amanaha. I am not the mind. Amanastvat, because I am not the mind. All of these dukkha, raga, dvesha, bhayadayaha me na santi. They are not in me. They are not in me. This aparoksha, aparichinna, brahmatma, the original consciousness. All of these are not in me. Me dvesha ragau, me lobha mohau, mado naiva me naiva matsarya bhavaha. न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानंद रूप शिवोहम शिवो. He's saying, Name dvesha ragau. How is he saying all this? Raga and dvesha may be there in the mind, but I am not in the mind. I am Brahmatma. That is why Bhagavad says, Amanastva me dukkha raga dvesha bhayadaya. And aprāṇah. So I am not the pranamaya kosha also. So we have negated the annamaya kosha, negated manomaya kosha, negating the pranamaya kosha. The prana are also under the control of prarabdha. All of this breathing, circulation, digestion, etc. That will take a hit as the body grows older. All of these different faculties and capabilities of the prana, they also come down. That is the nature of the body. That is the nature of the prana. So they can have issues. They will have issues. The pranas will have issues. There will be days when the digestion is good. There will be days when the digestion is bad. So all of those fluctuations will happen in the pranas also. Fortunately, the fact is, I am not the pranas. Yamanaha, I am not the manaha also. Shubhraha, I am ever pure, not affected by any of these, being asangaha. So aprano hyamanaha shubhraha. Here, ityadi shruti shasanat. Bhagavad is taking a quote from the Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad. Aprano hyamanaha. This is a quote. Shubhraha. This is taken from the Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad. That I can recall in Nididhyasanam. So we will go to the next verse. So all of these verses, we encourage that we can get these by heart and use them when I meditate. Etasmat jayate prāṇah.
एतस्मात् जायते प्राणः
Manas sarvendriyani cha.
मनः सर्वेन्द्रियाणि च
Kham vayu jyotirāpah.
कं वायुर्ज्योतिरापः
Prithvi vishvasya dharini.
पृथिवी विश्वस्य धारिणी.
So this, yes, yes.
It is in which verse, Satyanji? Number?
Yes, actually, this particular verse is a bit is a bit of an abnormal, a bit abnormal in this current flow of things. And therefore, it is not there in a lot of that Atma Bodha texts. In the Ramakrishna Mission book, it is there, but in some of the other texts, it is not included. Like in the Tika, it is not there. And so, even Swamiji has pointed this out that this verse looks somewhat abnormal in the flow of things. Therefore, we have not given this verse any particular number. We have just included it in our study. So this earlier verse, we have numbered it 33. We have not given this verse any number. And then we will come to verse 34 next. So this is lifted, this entire shloka, it is actually a mantra from Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad, which is verbatim placed here. And there is some connection, it is entirely not without connection. What it is saying is that etasmat, meaning from this Brahman, from this Atma, from this Brahman, prāṇah, manaha, sarvendriyāni, kham vayuhu, jyotihi, apaha, prithvi. So all of these, kham, vayuhu, jyotihi, apaha, prithvi, all of these 5 subtle elements originate from this Brahman, from this Atma, that is Brahman. So in Nididhyasanam, I can say, from me, all of these originate. Kham refers to akashaha. Kham means akasha. Vayuhu. And then jyotihi refers to agnihi. Apaha refers to jalam and prithvi. All of these 5 elements. Prithvi, vishwasya dharini means prithvi. That is the support of all of these beings. Of support of the entire world. So that all of these elements originate from etasmat, from this Atma, that is Brahman. And in other words, in Nididhyasanam, I can say they originate from me. And not just the subtle elements, but prāṇah, manaha, sarvendriyāni. So the entire sūkṣma śarīra, that includes the manaha, prāṇah, buddhihi, all the indriyas, they are all the sūkṣma prapañcha. The entire sūkṣma prapañcha also originates from me. So I am reminding myself that I am Brahman, from which the entire prapañcha, sūkṣma, the sthula prapañcha has come out through my Maya Shakti. That is the gist of this verse. We will enter the next verse also, and we may not be able to complete it today, but we will just do a part of it. Nirguno nishkriyo nityaha.
Nirguno nishkriyo nityaha.
Nirvikalpo niranjanaha.
Nirvikalpo niranjanaha.
Nirvikaro nirakaraha.
Nirvikaro nirakaraha.
Nitya muktosmi nirmalaha.
Nitya muktosmi nirmalaha.
So these here Vedanta provides me various words. And various words which I can use in Nididhyasanam in order to reflect on my own nature, to contemplate on my own nature. So these words are not meant to be descriptive words, words that add something to Atma. These are not descriptive words. But these words, if you see, they are all negations. Nirgunaha, nishkriyaha, nirvikalpaha, niranjanaha, nirvikaraha, nirakaraha, nirmalaha. So majority of the words here are negations. So they are all meant to negate some adhyasa or the other that I have falsely superimposed on the earth. Because of habit. So in Nididhyasanam, now we are no longer talking about because of ignorance. Because of habit I superimpose. So it is meant to negate all such superimpositions by understanding, by recalling the nature of Atma. So atasmin tad buddhi is adhyasa. In the not that, I superimpose that. So it is meant to negate all such superimpositions. So each word negates some particular habitual error. So here Bhagavad says asmi. If we see the second line towards the end, nitya muktosmi nirmalaha. If we split the sandhi, it becomes nitya muktaha asmi nirmalaha. So I'm saying asmi. So guys, I am not saying Brahman is like that, Atma is like that. I am saying asmi. Asmi meaning I am of this nature. So I repeatedly use I am. So in order to help me remove all of these superimpositions that I do habitually upon myself. The first word here is nirgunaha. So I have to recall that whatever attributes I impute to the Atma, they are only incidental attributes. They are incidental to Atma. They are not intrinsic to Atma. For example, if I take the example of clay pot, then where does this potness belong? The potness, because the pot doesn't have its independent existence, where do I place this potness? So I have to place the potness in the clay only. I cannot place it anywhere else. But then, is this potness an intrinsic attribute of clay? Is it an inherent attribute of clay? I have to say no. It is not an intrinsic attribute of clay. It is not an inherent attribute of clay. It is only an incidental attribute of clay. So similarly, every attribute really belongs to some upadhi. And it is only seemingly transferred to Atma. Like the red flower seemingly transfers its redness to the crystal. The crystal is not inherently red. Similarly, every upadhi seemingly transfers its attribute to the Atma, but intrinsically it is not there in Atma. So are there any attributes in Atma? We say every attribute belongs only to the drishyam. Atma is a drik. Every attribute belongs to the drishyam. Every attribute belongs to the seen, never to the seer. And since the seer can never be the seen, the drik can never be the drishyam, the drik has to be essentially attributeless, and therefore it is nirgunaha. Atma is attributeless. I am attributeless. So whatever attribute I may habitually impute to myself, I have to understand that that attribute has to belong to some drishyam. So I have to find some drishyam to which it belongs. For example, a person says, I am in pain. I am in pain. Then the doctor asks the person, so what is giving you the pain? He says, my body is giving me the pain. The doctor asks, is the whole body giving the pain? So he says, no, my legs are in pain. So are both the legs are in pain? So he says, no, left leg is in pain. So the entire left leg in pain. He says, no, my left knee is in pain. So he starts with, I am in pain. And when he looks into it, what does he discover? The left knee is in pain. Similarly, if I'm attributing anything to myself, I have to localize it. See where it belongs. It will invariably belong to some upadhi or the other. The Atma, I am nirgunaha. Every attribute can be localized to some upadhi or the other. I am nirgunaha. Pujya Swamiji points out, says, the day when I stop judging myself, I have made it. I have understood Vedanta that at that point. The day I stop judging myself, I should refuse to place any attribute in the Atma and localize it to the Upadhi to which it belongs. This is Nirguna. So we'll continue with this verse in the next class. So each of these words requires some dwelling upon to really see what is it that is negating, what is it that I habitually tend to attribute to myself that these words are negating. So we'll dwell more on these in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.